Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Our story tonight is about missiles and about the man whose vision made what you've just seen possible. It has taken many men working together to perfect our missile program. Like this man, Donald Douglas, Jr., president of the Douglas Aircraft Corporation, and Elmer Wheaton, vice president of the Missile and Space Engineering Division of Douglas. Mr. Don Belding, civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army. Brigadier General John T. Honeycutt, commanding general, Fort MacArthur. And Joseph H. Miles, consultant, Lockheed Aircraft Corporation. And Al Bayer, Hughes Tool Company, Aircraft Division. And Major General Holger Toftoy, commanding general of the Aberdeen Proving Ground, Aberdeen, Maryland. All of these men are here at NBC tonight for a press interview, and one of them is our principal subject.
Excuse me, gentlemen, may I have your attention here, please? I know that all of you but one were expecting me, and that one is you, Major General Holger Nelson Toftoy, United States Army. Tonight, this is your life. So, come on, stand up here. Much has been written about our missile development program, General Toftoy, but not very much about you. And yet such men as Dr. James Van Allen and Dr. Wernher von Braun have said that without your foresight and persistence, the United States would not be in its present strategic position. Is that right, Mr. Douglas?
That's sure right. And General Toftoy has been given the name of Mr. Missile. And his story tonight is an inspiration to all of us who work in the missile and satellite field. And I'm sure when it's told tonight, it'll be an inspiration to all of America.
Thank you, Donald Douglas. And now, General Toftoy, and gentlemen, thank you, one and all here. We saw each one of you here before we came into the room. Will you please accompany me back to our This Is Your Life studio? And while we're on our way, here's Bob Warren with a word about joy. General.
Well, you'll excuse me. Let's see if our bride of 6 months, who really faces a serious problem, gets it solved for her by joy.
I am always in hot water.
Married 6 months, Millie, and you're complaining about doing dishes? Wait till it's 10 years.
Oh, you should see my hands, Joan. They're a sight.
You could use joy.
Now, what's so wonderful about joy? I've used them all. A dishwashing liquid's a dishwashing liquid.
That's what I used to think. But joy's really different. It's milder. My hands never looked nicer or felt better.
And your hands are in hot dishwater as much as mine.
3 times a day, that's for sure. And that's the beauty of joy. It's made to be mild 3 times a day. With joy, it's like putting your hands in a bubble bath. You wouldn't mind that, would you?
No. And if joy can keep my hands pretty for that husband of mine...
What more can you ask?
Just one little favor. Will you lend me a little till I get to the store?
With joy.
Ladies and gentlemen, Major General Holger Nelson Toftoy, United States Army. And look behind you here, sir. Here to be with you tonight as we tell the story of your life are your father, Mr. Nils Toftoy of Seattle, Washington, and your sister Alice, Mrs. Glenn Roberts from Mason City, Iowa. I know you haven't seen your father in some time, sir, and we're mighty happy to have you here. Well, now...
We're all so very proud of you, Holger, and Mother would be if she were here, too.
Yes, indeed. Father, he's going to be in good hands, don't you think?
I think so.
Yes, all right. If you folks want to... What's that?
And we'll be watching back here.
Okay, Alice, you'll be watching, and we'll get into the life here of General Toftoy. Yes, sir. Here if you want. We're going to delve into the depths of your life. We'll start Cape Canaveral, Florida, January 31st, 1958. Why is that date so important to all of us, General Toftoy?
Well, this was the night that we set off Explorer 1.
That's right.
And I well remember.
You, General Toftoy, are responsible, directly responsible for this momentous event. How did it all happen? Let's turn back the years and see how from your earliest childhood in Madison, Wisconsin, your dreams took you well out of our time.
But Holger always made the things he thought about become realities.
Not a voice from outer space, General Toftoy. Just from off stage. Here from Cleveland, Ohio, is your cousin, Mrs. Alette Redmond. You and General Toftoy were brought up together, weren't you,
Yes,
Miss Redmond?
we were. He came to our house when he was 4 or 5 years old. And while he was growing up with me and Kib and brother, he had a wonderful workshop down the basement where he made some marvelous things. A whole set of furniture for me, and remember? The bedroom set he put together, and the car. I've got a picture of it here.
Yeah.
Remember that car?
You built this from scratch in 1916 when you were only 14, General.
Uh-huh.
Is that right? And how fast would it go, Miss Redmond?
Oh, 25 miles an hour.
At least.
Yeah, and it cost $100.
Well, what happened on your first ride, General Toftoy?
Going down a hill, the brakes set. And skidded down, made a flat point on the tire, so I found that I had developed self-energizing brakes without knowing it.
I think you hit a fruit peddler or something there.
Well, that was the next time. Yes.
Oh, it was another time. Well, thank you, Mrs. Alette Redmond of Cleveland, Ohio. You didn't expect it, no, indeed, sir. Holger Nelson Toftoy, the boy who dared to be different. The boy who allowed his imagination to carry him well beyond the pale of everyday existence.
It was a wonderful experience for me to watch Holger grow up.
Another voice very dear to you, General Toftoy. From her home in Seattle, Washington, your aunt, in whose home you were raised, Mrs. Oslog Toftoy. Even as a boy, General Toftoy, yes, you may sit and you may be seated by him if you want. It never allowed time to slip through his hands, did he, Mrs. Toftoy?
No, Mr. Edwards, he was a very busy boy, always experimenting with something, and kept busy. He made the automobile, and then he constructed an
Ice boat.
ice boat.
Yes.
An ice boat that went so fast and swift right over the thin ice, so it didn't even crack a little. Then he learned. Then he made furniture.
Yes.
That was actually in our house. Then he also learned to play the piano, and was a
Jazz piano, wasn't it? And
well,
a jazzy tune there he used to
and,
hit on.
Now let's.
Well,
see.
he was a cartoonist. He became an excellent cartoonist, you told me
And
earlier.
finally, a wonderful pistol shot.
Well, when you're 18 years old, you enter the University of Wisconsin. Your major, mechanical engineering. You're in the university's ROTC program, and your first summer takes you as a buck private to where, General Toftoy?
Aberdeen Proving Ground.
And you are now, 39 years later, its commanding general. You return to the University of Wisconsin for a second year. But your experience in the Army at Aberdeen has given you the incentive to make the Army a career. And it's a lucky day for the whole nation, General Toftoy, when you receive your appointment at the United States Military Academy at West Point. Thank you, Mrs. Oslog Toftoy. See you next later. The 1926 edition of the Howitzer, the yearbook of the Military Academy, says this about you, General Toftoy.
It is no exaggeration to say that almost everything that the class has done during the past 2 years has felt the guiding hand of little Ludi.
A classmate of yours at West Point, General Toftoy, now Chief of the Office of Information for the United States Army. From Washington, D.C., Major General Harry P. Stork.
You here. I'm not going to kiss you. This wouldn't be encouraged.
General Toftoy brought to West Point the same inventiveness he displayed as a boy, didn't he, General Stork?
He certainly did. And Ralph, to give you some idea of the versatility of Ludi, I have here a copy of the program of the Tabletop Review.
Oh, yes.
The musical show, 100th Night, put on at West Point in 1926. As you can see here, the cover is drawn by Toftoy.
Very good, too.
Remember? And also, Ludi was the president of the Dramatic Society. He was the general manager of the show. He was the stage manager. He did the costumes, the scenery, and the lighting. He wrote most of the lyrics and did about all of the piano accompaniment.
I did not take part on the stage.
It was good of you to leave something, for the other fellow. Quite a feat for a busy cadet, eh, General Stork?
Yes, it was. We all felt back in those days that little Ludi was really destined for big things. But the biggest thing that happened during his cadet life came during the year of 1925.
What could be more romantic than meeting your future husband at a cadet hop at West Point?
Your wife, Hazel, General Toftoy, who has come from Huntsville, Alabama, where she's been visiting your daughter. She's supposed to be producing the grandchild. Thank you, Major General Harry P. Stork, for coming here from Washington tonight. Would you be seated? Please, Miss Toftoy. You can sit over here, General. You're the star tonight, you see. You and General Toftoy, Miss Toftoy, met in 1925 and were married on December 28, 1926. Your own father married you, didn't he, Miss Toftoy?
Yes, we were married by my father, who was pastor of the North Baptist Church at Portchester, New York. And we had a military wedding with an arch of sabers, and classmates were the ushers.
Yes. Now, in just a moment, General Toftoy, we'll see how you figure in one of the most dramatic events of World War II. Right now, I think Bob Warren has a word about dreams.
Well, I do indeed, Ralph. Here's a very special dream. Dream of luxury every woman will enjoy.
How does it feel to drench yourself in luxury? How does it feel to drench yourself in luxury? You'll know when you discover Liquid Prel, the extra rich shampoo. Liquid Prel makes the most luxurious lather your hair has ever known. Thousands upon thousands of radiant beauty drops nourish the beauty of your hair. Luxurious? Yes. Liquid Prel is extra rich and very different from those thin, watery shampoos. Liquid Prel, extra rich, and the color of liquid emeralds leaves your hair shimmering, sparkling, luxuriously clean. Use Liquid Prel and know how it feels to drench yourself in luxury.
Back to This Is Your Life, Major General Holger Nelson Toftoy. Your first duty assignment is with the Air Service, the branch of the Army you wanted to be in, but after one particular experience, the Air Service decided that you were not for them. What was this experience, General Toftoy?
Well, there were a number. As a matter of fact, and I think I'll just say that they didn't have too many planes in those days, and they thought sooner or later it'd be me or a plane, and they'd better get along without me.
Yes. There was one, I think, where you climbed out in the fuselage or something there and fixed the engine with your tie. I don't know.
That's when I saved a plane for them, but they didn't take it this way.
Your very first venture into outer space, so to speak. And it leads to your transfer to the Coast Artillery branch of the Army. 1945, you're chief of the Ordnance Technical Intelligence Teams in the European Theater of Operations.
I served under then Colonel Toftoy in Europe during World War II and was proud to have a part in one of the most decisive operations in our country's history.
A man who has been a part of your life for a long time, General Toftoy. Then Major, now Colonel James P. Hamill, Director of the Ballistic Research Laboratories at Aberdeen. Would you tell us, Colonel Hamill, what led up to the decisive operation you were speaking of?
Well, it all began when the deadly German V-2 began raining destruction on the United Kingdom. It became apparent that the Germans had achieved a breakthrough in rocketry. General Toftoy knew that they were several years ahead of our own development program. It was therefore imperative that the knowledge they gained be transferred to the United States for use in our early stages of our rocket program.
Well, there were two important steps that had to be taken to gain this knowledge, weren't there, Colonel Hamill?
That's correct. First of all, we had to obtain as many parts, components as we could of the V-2s for test and analysis in the United States. And then, of course, we realized that we couldn't find operational V-2s, but we did know that there were parts stored at Nordhausen in a factory, sufficient for our uses. General Toftoy directed that enough parts for 100 V-2s be brought back to the United States for analysis and test.
Colonel Toftoy put you, Colonel Hamill, in charge of selecting the parts and getting them to a port for shipment to the United States, and fast.
Yes, because within a matter of days, that particular area was to become part of the Russian zone.
Colonel Hamill, you successfully accomplish this extremely difficult task under the most arduous conditions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The big German rocket base at Peenemünde on the southern shore of the Baltic Sea, 300 top German scientists and engineers under the leadership of Wernher von Braun, a brilliant 33-year-old rocket expert, had been accumulating a mass of knowledge which was essential for the United States to have in its possession. The Russian troops from the east and the Allied armies from the west were closing in. As the war in Europe was drawing to a close, von Braun and his men, with their scientific papers, left Peenemünde and headed for a safer retreat in Bavaria.
General Toftoy is the one man responsible for my being here tonight.
The voice of a man whose life was virtually in your hands, General Toftoy, and who has given to the United States the results of his brilliance. From Huntsville, Alabama, where he is technical director of the Army Ballistics Missile Agency at the Redstone Arsenal, Dr. Wernher von Braun. Would you tell us, Dr. von Braun, about your first meeting with General Toftoy?
Well, I first met you, General Toftoy, immediately after the shooting in World War II had ended. My fellow scientists and I had just made a rather desperate effort to escape the Russian armies which were closing in on us from the east. Thus, Mr. Edwards, when our families and us finally reached the American lines, our families, the women, particularly the children, were in utter misery. I was immediately impressed by your great humanity, General Toftoy, and after all the terrible things we had just been through, meeting such a man as you was a heartwarming experience indeed. You did not act at all like a military man in those days. Your first concern, I remember that very vividly, was for milk for our babies. You really took us under your wing. I remember how you left for the United States shortly thereafter to convince the Army that it was important that some of us be brought to America to work on rocket development, and how on your return to Germany, with this approval, you and I sat together and chose the, I think, 127 of us who were to come to the United States.
We wanted 300, remember?
I remember very well.
General Toftoy was then put in charge of the Rocket Research and Development Division of the Army, wasn't he, Dr. von Braun?
Yes. Under his direction, the Army-guided missile program actually came to maturity. There was the development of the Corporal and the Nike and the Honest John and the Redstone and other missiles. And I think I can state that without your foresight and determination, General Toftoy, particularly in those 7 lean years between 1945 and 1952, the United States would not be as advanced as we are today in our missile program. And let me add that without your kind heart, all of us whom you brought to this country would not be citizens of the United States today.
Thank you, Dr. Wernher von Braun. I've always said it's not a one-man show. In 1952, General Toftoy, the Army assigned you as director of the Ordnance Missile Laboratories at the Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. And it's while you were there that the Redstone missile, used by Dr. von Braun in the first successful orbiting of a satellite by the United States, is developed.
While General Toftoy was commanding officer at the Redstone Arsenal, I wrote him a letter.
The voice of a woman you've never met, General Toftoy, but she has quite a story to tell. Mrs. Floyd Lantizer of Livonia, Missouri. Now, what was it that you wrote to General Toftoy, Mrs. Lantizer?
I wrote to the general that our son, Robert Lantizer, was attending the Arsenal school there, and that it would be for the first time he would ever be away from home, and without a birthday cake. And I asked the general if it would be possible for him to do something about this.
Well, now, Miss Toftoy, would you tell us what happened when the general received this letter?
Well, we had been on a trip to Washington. We got back very late on Saturday night, and we found this letter from Mrs. Lantizer, and of course, the boy's birthday was the next day, so we didn't have time to go down and buy a cake.
Stores were closed.
The stores were closed then, of course, and so we decided we'd make a cake. And I made the cake, and the general decorated it.
And then, General, in some old civilian clothes, so that you wouldn't be recognized, you took the cake to the orderly room of Robert Lantizer's company and asked that it be given to him, a gift from his mother.
It was a delicious cake, General.
The recipient of your thoughtful gesture, General Toftoy, from the University of Missouri in Columbia, here is Robert Lantizer.
This is supposed to be my secret.
General, it wasn't until This Is Your Life contacted Mother and I that we even knew that you and Mrs. Toftoy had baked that cake.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Floyd Lantizer and Robert. Thank you. You'll get a chance to become better acquainted with General Toftoy at the party in his honor at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, where all of you have been staying. We have more surprises for you, General, which we'll reveal in just a moment. Can you stand them?
I doubt it.
Meanwhile, here's Bob Warren to tell us about Gleam.
There's one thing in particular I can't do, but I don't feel so bad about it when I find out that other people have the same problem. Look.
There's no doubt about it. She can't.
You're right. I can't always brush after meals, even though I know I should. For instance, when I'm out shopping. That's why I always start each day with Gleam.
Yes, Gleam, the toothpaste for people who can't brush after every meal. That's right. One Gleam brushing destroys decay and odor-causing bacteria. You see, Gleam, and only Gleam, contains GL70 to fight decay and odor. Just watch this scientific comparison. Here are mouth bacteria before brushing. Now see how one Gleam brushing destroys most decay and odor-causing bacteria. Yes, not only destroys decay bacteria, but at the same time stops mouth odor all day for most people with just that one morning brushing. Means a sweeter nighttime kiss. So use Gleam. It's the toothpaste for people who can't brush after every meal.
General, you and Mrs. Toftoy have two children. Your daughter Doris, Mrs. George Williams, now living in Huntsville, Alabama. She's awaiting the birth of your second grandchild.
Yeah.
And naturally can't be here. And your son, who graduated from West Point in 1958, Second Lieutenant Charles Toftoy. Where's he stationed now, General?
He's in Berlin with the 6th Infantry.
Well, the jet age in which you've had such a part makes it possible for him to join you tonight. So here for only a few days from Berlin, Germany, is your son, Lieutenant Charles Toftoy. Here's...
Despite Dad's tremendous variety of interests, he still had time to be a real companion to my sister and I. That's Doris, the one in Huntsville, Alabama, who's expecting right now. And also, the most important part is that he always let us choose the major decisions in our life. For instance, my choice of the military academy and to pursue an Army career. It seems like Dad's always on the right spot at the right time when some historical development occurs, and therefore I'm really fortunate to be in Berlin at this time as my first assignment on duty in the service.
Fine, Chuck. Besides the many awards which you've been given, General Toftoy, on July 30th, 1958, you were presented with this nation's highest peacetime tribute, the Distinguished Service Medal. As a record of your remarkable career, General Toftoy, Joy has for you tonight a film of tonight's program, the Bell & Howell 16mm sound projector and Bell & Howell electric eye movie camera. And for Mrs. Toftoy, Joy has this gold charm bracelet from Marshall Jewelers, New York City, which depicts the events of your life. Now, although you're a busy man, you do wisely find time occasionally for recreation, hunting, fishing, right, General? Boating. We know that you have been considering the purchase of a new car to take you to your favorite camping sites, kind of saving up here and there. Well, Joy would like to give you a lift in this department and has made arrangements with the Edsel division of the Ford Motor Company to present you with this 1959 Edsel Villager 9-passenger station wagon with plenty of room for all your hunting and fishing gear, power to spare to take you over the rough roads to the remotest areas where fishing and hunting is at its best. I'm sure you'll get lots of fun out of your new Edsel. Now, General Toftoy, as our story has shown, you've always been just a little bit ahead of our times. Could we presume to have a look with you into the future and the vast realms of space which man has yet to conquer? What do you consider to be the most pressing problem today in the field of missiles?
Well, I think the greatest need is for a good defense, an effective defense against incoming ballistic missiles. This country is subject to crippling attack today, and the only thing we see on the horizon, you might say, within the next 5 to 10 years is the Nike Zeus. Now, it's not enough just to push development. It's necessary that we also concurrently, and at this time, you might say, develop the manufacturing processes and the manufacturing and fabrication plants, the base on which to produce. Otherwise, there'll be a long lead time in production. I know the people that are doing it. I know the work that's been going on for years as preliminary studies. I know of the advances in technology. And, Mr. Edwards, I'd say that I am completely confident that this team can do the job, assuming that they get proper support.
And this is your life. Major General Holger Nelson Toftoy. Good night, sir, and God bless you.
Tom gets the phone to Hollywood via TWA's luxurious jet stream, non-stop service, coast to coast and overseas. Fly the finest. Fly TWA jet stream service. This is Your Life has been presented by Gleam in tubes, a new push-button pack, the toothpaste for people who can't brush after every meal, and Liquid Prel, the shampoo that's extra rich to drench your hair in luxury. And our thanks to TV Radio Mirror for their wonderful story about Ralph Edwards and This Is Your Life.